Yo, what's up everyone? Kyrios here, and today I want to talk about 𝙀𝙓𝙋𝘼𝙉𝙿. Now this just recently came out, and I wanted to delay this video just to make sure that they didn't change anything global, and they did kind of change things in global. So I just want to talk about some tips and tricks I have, which traits you should be going after, and kind of the characters you want to be using. So if you guys can't hit that like and subscribe, and when the server transfer opens, you should come on over to Solaris if you're in NA. Let's get started. All right, so let's speed through what 𝙀𝙓𝙋𝘼𝙉𝙿 is. 𝙀𝙓𝙃 is a monthly activity where you have to go through 5 different stages of bosses to try and kill them to get different resources. Now, those resources will be the fortress MicroReactor. It'll get you some more energy. It'll get you a bunch of other data repeaters, and it'll get you a few other things. Now, we'll talk about those items in just a second. But what I do want to say is that every single month, these bosses will change, or they will change order. And sometimes some of the bosses might slightly change as well. So you have to take a look at what the progression is. Now, if you're building healing especially, you really need to look at who's the 4th and the 5th boss so that you can take that damage reduction as a healer, because healers are supposed to be really tanky on top of that. Now, the one that everyone usually has trouble with is Gaia. The Centaur, not as hard this time around, but Gaia is definitely one to be very careful with the amount of healing. Now, as my first big tip, you want to make sure that you, on the last week of every month, you want to save 3 attempts going into the new month. Now, that's if you're going to do Abyss the first couple days of every new month, which is what I highly suggest you should do, because that's when a lot of people are going to be doing it, and that's the best time to get groups. But if you save these the 4th week of every month, so you have 3 attempts going into the next month, you can start off with 24 void energy, and that'll be later on in the video where I show you how that void energy really gave me an advantage on my free-to-play account to get some extra buffs really quickly and really early. So make sure that you are saving that on the last week of the month. Now, you can buy void energy from the shop, but it's very expensive at 15,000 a pop, and it's really designed to drain your gold, so have a very strict budget. Mine is buying 20 at most if I get very bad rolls. If you're free to play, I would say maybe 5 at most. Now, talking about quickly, just before we get into talking about the traits, because I know that's what everyone's very excited about, the characters and the traits. The one thing I do want to point out is that I'm not too happy with the MicroReactor, and I'm really not too happy with some of the items we have here. Yes, I know what you guys are going to say. CN is different, and I'm not really going to compare it, even though CN gets free SSR matrices like Samir and Crow. Nice! Got a Shiro matrix. What? What the f? Every single month, it's random, but it's the base chips. But they also get the shards straight out. So the one thing I don't like is that if you take those MicroReactors, you have to come here and you can use them, and you'll get enough to do look at this. I got 116. That's crazy amount. I will never get enough energy to even blow through this, but that means that you're only going to get a MicroReactor every roughly 12 to 14 days. Now, the big problem with this is that now you have to choose. Do you do eyepiece or do you do MicroReactor? And honestly, eyepiece is probably one of the hardest ones to get right now, with not being able to get a lot of those other resources. So that's my little mini vent on that. Let's talk about some of the team composition. All right, talking about team composition real quick. Now, there's one thing I do want to point out is that when you're starting to get your buffs, you'll see that, like, I'm just going to take mine as an example. As I'm starting to get my buffs, right, I'm doing volt damage because I'm a primary volt main. Now, with the amount of volt damage that you have here, 45%, and then you get the additional volt attack buffs in Void Rift or 𝙀𝙓𝙃 as well, because it's just like Void Rift. The one thing that I would say is that you typically are always going to stay on your main DPS. Now, there's a question I get asked a lot is that, and this is kind of like a mini tip, but you'll see these bosses have either fire damage received extra, ice damage received extra, volt damage received extra, and honestly, you're really just not going to change unless it's the final one and it's super hard. But unless you're a whale or a really lucky dolphin where you have multiple specs, or you have enough weapons to be able to do it, then you're not really going to change, because you'll have to have too much of that elemental energy in your tech specs, and it's just not going to work out very well for you. Now, speaking of classes that you want to go in there, you typically want to go in with 3 DPS and 1 healer. Yes, it's really nice to have a tank, but tanks don't really have the best spot in this. It's really hard for them to hold aggro. It is really nice for the shield shattering, but we're going to talk about that big tip about how everyone can be a shield shatterer in just a second. So I just want to quickly talk about the healing comp real fast. Now, I do not have Lyra, but if I was to make a healing comp, the best healing comp you could literally do right now is Lyra's absolutely amazing. Now, you could do Lyra and Saki. That would be great because it would give you shield shattering. It would give you resets on Lyra as well. And then the other thing I would say is that you can go back and forth between either Nemi, Zero, or even Coco. They all work perfectly great. And healers are a godsend in this. Literally, trying to do this without a healer is a pain. Absolutely a pain. So if I was to do a build, I would do Saki, Lyra, and probably Zero. That's what I really like, Zero, especially if you get that star advancements. So let's talk about the traits because that's what really matters here. All right, so we were able to put the someone on Reddit was able to put this together. So big shout out to the person who made a spreadsheet about this, made my life a lot easier. So thank you so much. Now, I'm going to talk about the best one in just a second because it's going to lead us into our next tip. But what I do want to talk about is the only 2 trees that you really care about are the attack and the support tree. Now, the one that I really want to point out that everyone needs, especially free to play. If you want to be a DPS, you could be a DPS. You could be an all-star DPS. But if you do not have knack for advancement, this one on the bottom that increases your star rating by +4. That means if you got A1 weapons, they become A5. You got A2 weapons, they become A6, A3, A6, right? Or A0 becomes A4. That's a really huge increase to your DPS. That is honestly one of the best ones that you can pick. Now, the other one I do want to point out for all of you attackers out there, there's one particular one that really matters. And at least only one person on your team needs it. But just in case you're going with pugs and everything like that, you might as well pick it up. 7,000 if the HP is below 20%. So this has a chance to essentially nuke the boss once the boss is at 20% life and just instantly kill it. Such a big help for Gaia. Now, one thing I do want to point out, everyone's probably wondering, you're like, oh man, how'd you get the blue? How'd you get the purple? How'd you do that? Well, when you combine 3 of the same greens together, it becomes a blue. Or if you combine 3 of the same blues together, it becomes a purple. And the same goes for all of it. You need 3 of the same types in order to merge. So there's going to be a little bit of juggling trying to get this to happen. Like if I was to return any, I would probably return this, and I would probably return this just to try and get more Heart of Thrones and a few others. So as my final little tip here, attackers, you're going to want to pick one of these. Don't do 3 of these. Don't do 2 of these. Pick either physical, heat, flash freeze, or electricity. You're only going to need one, whichever your primary is. Now, if we were to pick, we already talked about the Obliterator and how that's important. The second most important is Heart of Thorns. That is very, very important. 4% damage boost, stacking 15 times. So that's really, really good. But they're all good. Every single one on this page is good. So try and get them stacked up. And then for healing, we're in the same boat. Now, the one that you really care about for healing is that Assault Resonance. You need to be able to increase the damage of your allies by 45%. Absolutely amazing. Now, another one that's actually really good as well is Rapid Strike. Attacks have a 4% chance to weaken targets, reducing their damage dealt by 20%. If you're sitting there on Lyra just punching all day anyways, absolutely great. But all of these are good, except for maybe the dodge one and that attacks targets over 6 meters away. Not really the best one. Get rid of the magnetic force. Get rid of the supercomputing. Don't really need it. Now that brings us to the number one that every DPS and every healer should get. And it's Breakpoint Slash right here. Shield break effectiveness plus 200% or plus 350%. You don't need to get 350%. You really don't. You only need to get 200%. And to drive the point home, shield shattering matters so much that it will make or break a run. Like if you don't shatter the boss, especially on stage 4 and 5, they can essentially do AoE that can almost one-shot your whole team. So that leads me to my final big tip. Big tip. Now, depending on if you're DPS or if you're a tank or a healer, which we've already talked that tanks aren't really needed, but they are nice to have if you're with a whale. You will see that each of these at the beginning, once you have void energy, will have 4 each. Now, what you can do, there's 2 tips behind this in one. One, say I'm going for defensive, right? I'm going to load that up, right? You can consume 2 to redraw that. That's actually not what you want to do. You only want to redraw once your energy starts getting to like 8, 9, something ridiculous where it's too much or above. So you will have this redraw, but that's really not what you want to do. What you actually want to do is select any one of these, and then you're going to refund it because you'll get all 4 of your energy back. So say, for example, we'll take the frost reduction, which isn't one that we're looking for. But what I can do is I can get rid of this. I can recycle it and get my 4 energy back. So that allows me to select through a lot of these until I can find the ones that I'm really, really looking for. And none of these really strike my fancy because we're really looking only for that one defensive ability in the defensive tree. So we're going to keep loading until we find it. Now, this one's really good. Grabbing Halo would be very good. All physical attacks, stuff like that. So I might grab that one. And you can see how you can reload that for free until it gets 5 energy. And it's still worth doing that. Doing it repeatedly until that gets to about 5 or 6. Now, just don't be too aggressive with it. Don't be too picky. You need to still go after the ones that you're looking for. All right, so we talked about the best buff in the game. Let's see if we can fish it real quick. So we're going to actually spend a lot of time trying to fish that buff. Now, knack for advancement, very, very good. Once again, you definitely want to make sure that you are doing that. But as of right now, I'm probably going to refund that. Or I'm going to refund the frost damage. Get that energy back. We're going to continue to load here. We're not getting what we're actually looking for, but that's okay. That's okay. So we're wasting a little bit of energy to try and get that one that really, really matters. Now, we got knack for advancement too. That's actually really good. Now we almost have a 2-2 off the first one right there. All right, guys, that's all she wrote. Let me know in the comments down below. Did this help you out at all? Do you have any other additional questions? I can try and answer them in the comments. Hopefully this will help a lot of people out. Hopefully you're liking the new Void Abyss. At least it's a little challenging. Or at least it's even challenging for me, even though I'm carrying people through it. So, but it's a lot of fun, and I do like seeing people progress in their career, get stronger, get better, whether you're free to play, light spender, whale, whatever, right? It's all a good time. So I'll check you guys on the next video. Take care, and fist bump from me to you.